Hello. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing? Doing well? That's one person. Hey, can I get all my friends who are in the back at the tables? All my crew over there, come on over here. Adults, y'all are staying. But everyone else, come on in. Glad you are here this morning. I am particularly loud today. I just heard that. Huh? What did you say? We already knew that? That's rude. When am I not loud? Also, very painful sentence to say, but it's true. Hey, glad you are here this morning. You have probably seen a lot of us in these teal, minty, I don't know, what color would you call this? Mint, teal, is the dress blue and black or white and gold? All right, and that is our camp, just pre-registration shirt. Registration is now open for camp. The theme is Anomaly. Flightweek.com is where you are going to want to go for that. You can register online. You can do it all online now if you would like. When you go to flightweek.com, you will have two things that you need to do. First, you're going to need to register under our paperwork, and then you'll need to go to Camp Docs, which is the camp, like Cedar Hill, Mount Lebanon's paperwork, and you'll need to do both, okay? If you don't fully complete that stuff, you'll get a phone call from us. But if you have any questions about it, let us know. But you can do both of them completely online. If for some reason it's just not working for you, we also have paperwork if you want to go back to the old school way as well, all right? But go ahead and start registering now. If you, go ahead, take it. It's all right. I'll step out of it. You're good. All right. So you can go ahead and start doing that right now. Here's the thing. From now till May 8th, it's $50 off from camp. All right, so the cost is usually $265. It's $215 for early registration. After May 8th, goes back up to $265, all right? So tell your parents that, especially if you've got siblings and you're like, oh, a lot of us are trying to go to camp. Is there a discount? Yeah, it's $50 a person. So go ahead and do that right now. You'd have to register and pay for that, though, before May 8th. After that, it goes up to $265. Trying to think what else. This Wednesday night, we have something called our City Cruise that are starting. So for those of you who join us for the city on Wednesdays, we're starting these groups on Wednesday nights after the city. So at 7:45, we'll meet and we're going to hang out. We're going to eat dinner and we're just going to discuss what we talked about that night. We're going to ask some questions that we can really use to apply that lesson through the rest of the week. So would really like for you to join us on that. Hope that you can be with us for that time. Your parents today have an opportunity to hang out across the street at our technology workshop, just helping them figure out how they can best help you best use the technology that you have. And so it is free. If they have not registered, they are still more than welcome to go to it. And for those of you who are like, my parents are going to try to drag me to that, that's okay. We'll be hanging out here in the city this afternoon. We'll have a couple people here just hanging out. You can have pizza here while your parents learn about how you use your cell phone. All right? So if you want to be able to, if your parents want to be a part of that, a lot of them may be partaking in that, and you can hang out here while they're over there. Or you can go there as well. Maybe you want to learn about technology. It's open for that. What else am I trying to think about? Oh, yes, seniors. Where are y'all? Woo! Senior recognition is May 19th. Yes, May 19th is senior recognition, and you do not want to miss out on that. If you have not yet RSVP'd to me, please text me or email me so that way I can get that down. And I would love for every senior in this room to be part of that. If you are on Team 412, I'm asking you to help serve that day, especially if you are in the junior class. That's going to be May 19th. after church till about 2 o'clock. Would love for all of you seniors to be able to join us, be one last time for us to be able to celebrate with you and love on you and say how proud we are of all that you've accomplished. We're going to have a new crew of, hey, here's the thing, looky here. We're going to have a new crew of upcoming 6th graders coming to visit next week, just visiting. It's not crossover yet, but I want us to be prepared to welcome them and bring them here. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Next week, if you can remember this, I want you to wear purple. All right? We're going to do this for crossover as well, but purple is going to be the color that they are for camp. So we're just going to show that we're excited to have them and excited that they're going to be around. So wear your purple shirts, whatever you might have, and we're just going to be so enthusiastic about having them here next week. All right? I'm trying to think what else. Memphis people, if you did not yet check with Heather just to see what your balance is on that, please do so before you leave today. Our next meeting will be the last Sunday of May, and then we go to Memphis June 16th. It's going to be a fun time. And like I said before, camp July 14th to the 19th. Register now at flightweek.com. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do right now, though. I'm going to ask everyone to stand up, and then I want you to do your best in the next 30 seconds to see how many of these teal shirts that you can spot. Try to get a final number on how many of them are in this room right now. Ready, set, go, 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 go. All right, so everyone stand up real fast. We're going to get started in worship this morning. Tommy Turner is going to be starting a new series for this morning, but I'm going to let him talk all about that. I'm not going to step on his toes on that. Hey, look this way real fast. Glad you're here this morning. Love having you here every Sunday. Hope to see you here this Wednesday night as well. Let's pray as we get into this time. Heavenly Father, thank you for every student in this room, and I pray that you just bless them with more of you, with more of your presence, God. And that you let yourself be known to them, that they have a great knowledge of who you are and that they know you deeply and not just know things about you. So God, I pray that as they move towards the summer, that you move in their hearts and lives and elevate their relationship with you in all of this. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. We just want to worship this morning. And so let's keep our attention on Christ as we sing. This is where worship starts, here in the temple of my heart, remembering who you are and all you've done. And this is your majesty, and all I have tasted and have seen, remembering who you are. Once again, let's sing it. 'Cause I see the Lord forever glorified, exalted and lifted high, and all of the kingdom it cries, you are the Lord. Let's sing this morning. This is eternity. This is eternity, deep calling deep inside of me. I'm right where I'm meant to be, here with you. And this is your family, and stretching as far as I can see. I'm right where I'm meant to be. Once again, and I see the Lord forever glorified, exalted and lifted high, and all of the kingdom it cries, you are the Lord. You're seated upon the throne, the God who is three in one, the Father, the Spirit, the Son, you are God who is three in one. The Father, the Spirit, the Son, you are the Lord. You're holy, you are the Lord. You're worthy, you are the Lord. Amen. Let's go to God in a word of prayer. God, we're so thankful that we can say that you are the Lord. God, that you're over everything, you're in control of everything, nothing takes you by surprise. And so, God, whatever season we're in, whatever struggles we see, God, you're the Lord. And so we pray that we would recognize that this morning as we proclaim those words. And God, I just pray that you would speak through Tommy, that you would use him to help us this morning grow, help us this morning just interact with your word and receive something that'll help us just be transformed. So we pray all this in your name, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. Can we give it up for Bosch? Can we give it up for Bosch and our singers? Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and jump into our small groups before you guys sit down. Let's do it. Well, good morning. We've got 1,000,001 things going on during this busy season, and I'm so glad that you guys are here with us this morning. I know we've got Memphis trip coming up. We've got flight week coming up. For our parents, we've got that technology thing, senior recognition. I mean, we've got crossover with 7th graders coming. It is just a busy season. All right, you guys ready to jump in this morning? We're ready? We're ready? This group is ready. I appreciate that. All right, guys, we are starting. Good morning, sir. How are you? Good to see you. Glad you made it. All right, good morning. We are starting a new series in the book of Judges, Broken Record, all right? This rebellion on repeat. We're in the same story. We've just moved on a little further. The same story that started back in Genesis. We're just going to catch up. So we got Moses, and he was leading the people through the wilderness. We've got Joshua. He has led the people into the promised land. And Joshua is old and gray now, and in comes the book of Judges. And let's talk about this rebellion on repeat. Back in the 1950s, William Golding, he wrote a novel. And he took a bunch of well-educated, high society English boys, and they crash-landed on this paradise island, this remote island. It was a bunch of kids, and they crash-landed, and there were no adults. It was just these boys left to run everything. And it posed the question of what would happen? What would happen if you took a bunch of kids that had a bunch of knowledge, who knew the right way to live, and said, hey, there's no rules, there's nobody to oversee you. You guys go do it. Would they create this utopian paradise, or would something else happen? And as the story progresses, we see that instead of creating harmony and peace, these little boys fight for power. They hunt, they kill each other. You guys, some of you have read this, Lord of the Flies. Yeah, I see Daisy's like, got it. Nice job. That they do exactly the opposite of what we think that they should do. They sacrifice to this beast that's on the island, right? They hurt each other. It's really all about who's going to be the dominant kid. And this beast that they sacrifice to is really just a shadow for us to go, hey, there's some evil that exists inside of our hearts that is working in all of us, even children. It's imaginary to them, but it's a real thing that it shows these consequences of what's going to happen if we reject rule, reject authority, and do what we think is best, what we think is right. Golding's book sold more than 15 million copies. And it's not because it's unbelievable, right? It's not because, oh my God, this is a great story, and it's unbelievable that something like this could happen, but quite the opposite. It sold so many copies because it's an imaginary take on what we know to be true about our own hearts. That if we would reject and remove authority in our life and make decisions based on what we as individuals believe to be right and wrong, that chaos would ensue. And that story is kind of like the book of Judges. Kind of just like that. So in the book of Judges, as it unfolds, we witness Israel rebelling, right? This is God's chosen people. They've gone from this triumphant people, right, that lasted through the wilderness, that crossed over the River Jordan, that conquered these lands, right? These were people that weren't fighters, they were nomads. The whole life, they'd grown up just wandering the desert, and yet when they came to these giant cities like Jericho, the walls came crashing down and they took it over to like Ai. And they chased these guys until the sun stood still and they found them and killed them and took over. They were warriors because God was with them. And so they were these triumphant people. And Judges is the book that shows us how slowly over time they fade into being just like the Canaanites. And it's a really, really sad story. Because God has said, hey, you are my people and I'm your God, and I want this close, intimate relationship with you. And yet, these people go, I don't really want that. I'm not really down for that, God. What if I wanted to do what I wanted to do? And so, rather than believing and obeying in God, they said, no, I'm going to do just my own thing. And here's the thing. It takes faith and obedience. It takes faith and obedience to do what God has for you. And the real thing is, it takes continued faith and obedience. It's not a one-time thing of, I had some faith and I was obedient to God this one time. No. It takes continued faith and obedience to live in God's plan. It took faith and obedience for them to cross over the River Jordan. It took faith and obedience for them to march around Jericho and watch the walls fall down. And they thought, oh, this is it. We're here now. But the truth of the story is, it took even more faith and obedience for them to live in the land, to occupy the land, to defend the land. And these guys just weren't quite there yet. And so if you have your Bibles, turn them to the book of Judges, chapter 2. If you have your Bibles app, go ahead and open that bad boy up. Look under the events tab, and you'll see an event here for Cross City students. Judges, chapter 2. Woo! Ew. Yeah, thanks for the two of y'all. Y'all are great. Love you. So there's this cycle. There's this cycle that we're going to see here. This cycle of sin and salvation, where God's people are going to be living in the good grace of God. They're going to get comfortable and decide that we want to do what we want to do, and so sin follows. When sin comes, consequences follow that. And then when the consequences show up, God's people go, God, help me, help me, help me. And they turn back to him, and the cycle starts all over. And the book of Judges is just that. But it's also this cycle with God, where God says, I love you and I want you to be my people, and we're in fellowship. And then when his people start to sin, he says, I love you, but I hate this sin. And then he says, I love you, and you're going to have to bear with the consequences of your sin. And then as the people cry out, God says, I love you, and I'm going to redeem you. I'm going to bring you back to myself. And we rinse and repeat over and over again. So Judges chapter 2, are we there? Judges chapter 2, are we there? Awesome. All right, here we go. Let's jump right in, guys. Judges chapter 2, let's look at verse 8. Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. And they buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnath-Heres, in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gaash. After that whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. So let's hang out right there. There's 3 quick verses, and there's something really terrible that's going on right here. And it's not that Aaron lived to that Joshua lived to 110. It's not where they buried him, but it's verse 10. The whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors. Joshua's generation had been gathering around the stories of their fathers, about what God had done in the wilderness. They had been there. But then this next generation that comes up, they didn't know God, and they didn't know what he had done for Israel. And without reading any further into this, we know that there's a problem. We know that that's a problem, that these guys don't know God, they don't know what he's done, and there's consequences that are come out of that. We know that to be true without even reading further, because they didn't remember what God had done for them. And so the first thing I want us to do in our small groups is talk about this. What helps us? What helps you remember God's work? What helps you remember God's work in your lives and the lives of your friends and family and those around you? What do you do to help remember that? Because if we can kind of curtail that and say, hey, let's stop right there. What keeps me away from this? Because I know that calamity is going to follow, but what can keep me away from this? So would you guys talk about that in your small groups for a few minutes? What helps us remember God's work? What he's done for you? What he's done for your family? How do you remember that? Ready, set, talk. All right, guys, let's bring it back. Thank you, Alex. You knew it was coming. We did know it was coming. All right, Alex. Let's bring it back together and let's talk. Well, how do we remember what's going on? Samson, would you come this way, all the way over here, all the way over here, all the way to the raised hand. So let's talk for a second. What helps you remember?
I think something that helps me remember is the adults in my life, because I went from having to living with and being surrounded by adults who didn't really care, who, like Katie's word is Fishtions. They fake Christians and people who didn't really know how to share that with me, to not only being surrounded by but living with people who not only care about that but strive to make sure I'm on that path.
I like it.
And I like the accountability of that.
So not only being surrounded by, but even living with folks that would remind you about God's work in your life. Somebody else catch it for? Ready, go. Nice, Danielle. What do you got, Max?
So I feel like whenever we go and do things, like obviously like mission trips and camps, then we're given t-shirts and like it's so we all look uniform and stuff. But also like looking back, like when you're wearing it, I know at least for me, like I look at them and I think of like what went on that trip. So I'm like, oh yeah, like so many great things happened at this camp, or oh yeah, I remember happened on this mission trip, and it's just like little reminders throughout my day. Okay, wait, I have one more and then I'm done. So also like small little things that should have happened but God like prevented from happening, like keeping us safe or something. Like I got into a really bad car accident and I should have like been obviously hurt, but I wasn't. And so now like I'll like just do driving and I'm just thinking like, wow, that's crazy because obviously stuff should happen.
All right, so God keeping us from some things also. I like the shirts thing. Come on, Matt. Hey, ready? Good. Sorry, friend. I don't usually throw candy at people. I'm sorry. But that's really awesome that we would wear our shirts and that they would be reminders for us, not only of the scripture that we usually have on them, but of, come on back with the mic, but of what happened while we were there. For me, camp is amazing year in and year out, and there's always something that God does that's not, the whole camp is amazing, but there's always something specific that God does in my life or around my life that is monumental for me. I didn't see you raising your hand. Go ahead. That is monumental for me, so I love that. That's a callback. Yes, sir.
How much you've like changed since like from your past. So like you remember how much you've changed and bettered yourself.
Started from the bottom.
Yeah.
Now we're here. I like that. Yes, absolutely. Let's look back and see where we were to where we are and look how far God has brought us. Absolutely. That's a really, really big one. All right, overhand ready? Here we go. Boom. Last one? Let's go last one and then we'll move on. What do we got?
Kind of when we memorize Bible verses and see what God did in the Bible and kind of see how he works in our lives, just how he worked in people's lives in the Bible.
Absolutely. Read the Bible. I like that one. That's really, yes, they love the group as well. Read the Bible. All right, that's super awesome. Thank you, Samson. Can we give it up for Samson holding the green mic? Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, absolutely, read God's word. Get to know not only about God, but get to know the character of God. When you begin to unpack the Bible and his living word to us, that's what happens. There's an intimate knowledge of God that we begin to enter into if we would just open up and read his pages. And then even this, guys, that we would sit and talk about it, not only within each of our small groups, but here collectively, that we would peel some of that out and go, hey, let's talk about what God has done in our life. Let's talk about this out loud to a group. Let's be mindful of that, not only so that we know, but so that we know, right? So that all of us know together. So I love that. The root of the problem here is sin, and we know this. The reason that they would stray away from God is sin. It's a physical act of rebellion against God. And a lot of times we think about sin as like lying or stealing, but sin is really a matter of the heart, and we know that the physical displays of sin are just the fruit of what's already been growing in our heart. And that's what's happening here in the book of Judges. And so a lot of times we talk about idolatry as bowing down to an image, right, to a statue, worshiping this false god. But it can be more subtle than that. And I know that we just finished our Wednesday night series talking through a lot of this, and so it was love that how Wednesday we finished it, and then boom, here we are. But it can be more subtle. It can be like us seeking approval or seeking power or seeking pleasure. That we can diagnose the adultery of our hearts by examining the areas of our desire. Where have our desires turned into adultery? And so here's what God sees. God sees this, right? God sees that they didn't want to listen to what he had for them. And like any good parent, God disciplines them. Right? Because he wants us on the straight and the narrow path. So he disciplines his children to let them know that, hey, you're living in disobedience. You're not doing the things the way that you should do the things because of your rebellion, because of your idol worship. And so discipline's going to come. So let's get back into Judges. Judges 2, verse 11. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord and served the Baals. They forsook the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshipped various gods of the people around them. They aroused the Lord's anger because they forsook him and served Baals and the Ashtoreths. In his anger against Israel, the Lord gave them into the hands of raiders who plundered them. He sold them into the hands of their enemies all around, whom they were no longer able to resist. Whenever Israel went out to fight, the hand of the Lord was against them to defeat them, just as he had sworn to them, and they were in great distress. They were in great distress. That we've got to look at this and go, what's happening here, right? God is disciplining his people because they weren't listening, because his anger began to grow against them. And it's not like, boom, he's angry. It's like a fire. Anybody ever started a fire, right? Gone to camping or even in the fireplace? Fire starts small, even just a spark, and they begin to grow and consume, and before long you have this raging fire. And the anger of God is very much like this. He is slow to anger, and yet his anger is burning against these people because they refuse to listen to what God had said to them, that they're his people, and they would rather serve the created things than the Creator himself. And so when we look at this, we see that they followed and worshiped various gods of the people around them. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Because what God said was, hey, go into the land and drive them out. Go into the land and kill everyone that's there. And they didn't. In chapter 1, we see at least 8 times that these people refuse to listen to God. They refuse. And so instead of killing everybody that's there, they go, well, these guys fought really hard and we're done fighting against them. So you know what? Let's just live here side by side. They're going to stay over there and we're going to stay over here. Or, God, we really didn't want to kill all these folks either. And so instead of driving them all out, we're actually going to make them our slaves. We're going to make them our servants. They're going to do work for us, which is good because we're going to build cities and build temples for God people. And so it's kind of a good thing, right? And they did this again and again and again. They even went so far as to say, we're not going to kill them. We're actually going to live peacefully with them, right? Because God loves peace, and we're going to marry our daughters to their sons, and we'll be one big happy family. And so now what's happening is they're living in and among people who don't serve God, who don't follow God. They follow these other gods. And these guys are going, yeah, I want to do that. I'll do that too. Because God has said, hey, you live by faith and obedience. You listen to what I say, you believe it, you do it. And watch how I bless you. Watch how I carry you through. It's not easy. We know it. But this is how you're supposed to live. And these guys said, no. We serve these other gods, this Baal and Ashtoreth, that this is the god of the storm and the god of fertility, and they bring our crops because you guys were wandering in the wilderness, and God fed you while you were in the wilderness, but now you're here, and we grow our crops. And so you need to serve the God of the crops. That's our God. You see, they're just 2 generations removed from the generation that lived in Egypt, that planted crops, that lived there. And remember, the plagues that God sent to Egypt was to show that these gods are not gods at all, that I am God. And in just 2 generations, they had forgotten all of that. They'd put all that aside, put all that behind them. And so now God comes and disciplines them, that his anger burns against them. And now the very things they were supposed to do, hey, go fight against these people, drive them out, I'll be with you. Because they're not serving God, God says, all right, well, if you don't want me there, then you go and fight. And God's not with them. And they lose these fights again and again and again. This is God's discipline of them. And so here's our main point of the day is this, that God disciplines his people when they turn away from him and they do what they think is right in their own eyes. Just like in Lord of the Flies, we see guys that do what's right in their own eyes and chaos ensues. That's what's going to happen here. And it's a pattern. Judges chapter 2 is a synopsis of all the rest of the book of Judges. So while we're here for the next month or so, you're going to see this cycle happen again and again and again. That God is going to raise these people up, these judges, to save his people. And they're going to listen for just a little bit and then go right back. Check it out. In verse 14 that we just read, it opens up by describing God's anger. Right? That God is very, very angry with him. And as we go on, we'll unpack why he feels this way. But let's talk about us. They did what was right in their own eyes, not what was right in God's eyes. How do we do that? What does that look like for us? What are some ways that we're tempted to do what's right in our own eyes? What are some examples of that in our culture? Because here's the thing, it's very easy to look at the children of Israel and go, man, they're stupid, right? Like, look what God has done for them again and again and again, and they continue to turn back into sin, and it's really easy for us to look at that and go, look how foolish they are. Look at these silly people. But it should give us an opportunity to ask a really tough question. Am I like that? Is that me? Am I tempted to half obey God? Am I tempted to make a statement of faith and then not live it out? Have I been doing that? And so you guys talk for just a minute. What are some ways that we're tempted to do what's right in our own eyes? I'm going to do what I want to do because I think it's right. And how does this show up in our culture around us? Would you guys spend just a few minutes talking about that? Ready, set, go. All right, all right, all right. What do we think? You're ready with another answer. I like this. I like this. So what are some ways, how are we tempted? Go ahead.
In our own eyes, my own personal thing is that me and my family members do devotions, and we get distracted by doing stuff around the house, so we never got time to do it.
I love getting distracted. Entertain me, please. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, watch out for the pole. There we go. What you got?
For me personally, it's like wanting to like expose people on the things that they've done wrong in like front of people to be like, this is who they really are. When in reality, God tells us, pull that person aside one-on-one. If the problem is still not done, pull in another person and then the church.
You want to clap back right there. Pass the mic right next to you. That's good. I want to clap back right there. I like that. We got another one in that group? No? Okay. Boom. Look at that, guys. What do we got? All right, how does it show up in our culture, or how are you tempted personally? Come on, Harry.
I don't know about how it shows up in our culture, but I do know one form that it could be. And let's say that somebody's in poverty. They don't have much money, and they don't have much stuff. And they want something. They see something. They're like, I need this. And since they're in poverty, oh, I can just steal it. That's okay for me because I don't have like much money or anything, so it's just there and I can take it. It's mine.
Right, and it's okay. That's not like just a I don't have the money to do things. That's a I want a thing, and it doesn't matter if I have money or not. And I just want it, so I'm going to take it. Absolutely, we're tempted that way. Boys, we got no? Okay, come on again. Let's go.
No, they got it. They got it.
Seventh graders, we got okay, nothing. Here we go.
For me, my dad's in jail, and obviously he did a bad thing to be in jail, but I get mad at all the people, like officers or the judges, etc., instead of getting mad at my dad for him doing the wrong thing.
Okay. Because he's so close to you, I'm going to be mad at the people who put him where he's at, as opposed to like, hey, you did the yeah. Absolutely. I want to justify it, right? Because it hurts my feelings. Absolutely. Here we go, B. Ugh, that was my worst one yet. I'm sorry. All right. So, now we got one. Come on, seventh grade boys. They want some candy. I understand. What you got?
People just want to do whatever they do, and they think it's okay.
We want to do it just because we want to do it. That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. Quick and easy. Quick and easy. All right. You got one more for us? Come on. I don't have any more candy, but let's do it.
I don't need candy, thank you. So I feel like sometimes we like have something and it's like good, but we like want it right then and right there instead of waiting for like something great that God has in store for us because we're like impatient. So we're like, well, we have this thing and it's like good, so we can just keep this. And God's like, well, don't. Like, I have something better for you. But we're like, well, it's okay. Like, we'll just keep this. It's fine. Instead of like preparing for this like amazing thing that He has.
I don't want to wait. I want it now. I want it now. Yes, that's absolutely right. Whether it's a relationship or car or whatever it is in our life, right? Like we're just like, I want it now, and I don't care what it takes to get there. That's absolutely right. So let's continue. Let's jump right in because I want to talk about this some more. Chapter 2, verse 16. The Lord raised up judges who saved them out of the hands of these raiders. Yet they would not listen to their judges, but prostituted themselves to other gods and worshiped them. There are some phrases in the Bible that bring us great comfort because we can put ourselves in that verse and listen to God talk to us, and it brings rest to our hearts. The Lord is my shepherd. I'm with you always. Come and you'll find rest for your souls. These verses should comfort us. But Judges 2:17 is not one of those verses. Quite contrarily, it's one of the verses that should cause us great unrest. It says, yet they would not listen to their judges. And you're going, I don't really know. But can we put 16 back up there? Guys in the back, can we put verse 16? Flip back one. The Lord raised up judges. The Lord provided these people. And then 17 goes on to say, yet they would not listen to their judges. Last time I was up here, maybe 2 times ago, we talked about the serpent, right? Raised up high, but the reason for that was because God's people complained against God, against God's provision and his manna from heaven, and against God's man, right, Moses. They said, we don't want that. We don't want to listen to you. We don't want it. And here we see the same thing. God has provided these judges, and they refuse to listen. That there's something in our hearts that wants to reject what is good and right, especially when it comes as authority. And that's what these people do. They refuse to listen to the very ones God had sent to them. They spurned God's good gift. Who's God put in your life to speak to you? Alex said it earlier with, like, hey, some older folks in my life, some parents and parent figures that God has put in my life. Pastors, mentors, right? We think about Ben, we think about Bosch, we think about Pastor Metter. But sometimes it's even a worship song, whether it's here or something that comes on the radio. Sometimes it's in the stillness of our devotion time. Sometimes it's a stranger or even a child. You guys have said some really profound things in here over the months that I take away, and I continue to tell people because it weighs on my heart, like God uses you to speak to me. So who is God using in your life to speak to you? And are you listening? Because these guys weren't. So let's go on. 17, yet they would not listen to their judges, but prostituted themselves to other gods and worshiped them. I thought I was going to go on, but I can't. Prostituted themselves to other gods and worshiped them. Let's unpack. God has this intimate relationship that he desires for us, that he is our God and we are his children, but also he is the husband and we are his bride. There's a deep, intimate relationship that's happening. And the intimacy that we share with God is worship. That is how we are intimate with him in this husband-wife relationship. And if you would take the intimacy of a marriage and take it outside of that marriage, it is prostitution. Looking at the root word and looking at other translations and just looking at what this word shows up again and again and again, it's Sunday morning, but here goes. God says, whore. That's what it says. That you would take what's mine and give it away, that you've prostituted yourselves, that you've went out whoring with these other gods, that is how he feels about idol worship, that you would give what's his away. And it's in this act of worship. It is in this act of following other gods that God says, you have forsaken me and you have given away what is rightfully mine. And now we understand this anger that God has towards his people. We understand how he really feels. And again, it's easy to look at this and say, just these people. But it's not. It's us. We are those people. We just spent a month talking about idol worship on Wednesday nights. And we can find ourselves in that. But we don't have to stay there. All right. The rest of 17 says this. Then they quickly turned from their ways of their ancestors who had been obedient to the Lord's commands. 18. Whenever the Lord raised up a judge for them, he was with the judge and saved them out of the hands of their enemies, as long as the judge lived. For the Lord relented because of their groaning under those who oppressed and afflicted them. 19 says, but when the judge died, the people returned to ways even more corrupt than those of their ancestors, following other gods and serving and worshiping them. They refused to give up their evil practices and stubborn ways. They refused. That turning to other gods is not this nuanced thing. Like I have to be a scholar and I have to deeply study the Word of God and the laws of God to understand what God wants from me, or else I'll miss it. No. It was point number 1. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Only worship me. Moses repeats this in Deuteronomy 19 times. Right? So if you're tracking with this, Deuteronomy was Moses' swan song. Moses says, hey, the promised land's right there. I can see it, but I can't get into it. I know I'm about to die, so let me give you this last bit of instruction before I die, before you guys go without me. Follow God. Worship God. Do not worship anyone else but God. Are you listening? Only worship God. 19 times he repeats this. If you don't, God is going to hand you over. If you don't, he is not going to be with you. Only worship God. And yet they missed it. They missed it. So what happened? How did they go from these people that said, hey, we're going to follow God, and God is going to be with us, and is going to bring us the victory, to these idol worshipers? Let's be honest. Idol worship is everywhere. Even in today's culture, everywhere that we look around us, someone is worshiping something other than God on high. We see it all around us. We see it at home. We see it at school. We see it on TV. Anybody just get through watching the combine and the draft? Anybody watch the draft, NFL draft? I see a couple of you. It's all right. Like, man, my life is about to change. I'm about to get drafted to an NFL team. I'm going to go from this college guy to millionaire. And we sit and we make a 3-day party out of it. Because, man, the NFL, look how big this thing is, right? And so we follow that. Also, idol worship is easy, guys. It is easy. There is no shame in saying that following God, being faithful and obedient, is hard. It is difficult. I know it. You know it. Following an idol is easy. Because the biggest idol is our own pleasure. And so we've inverted this thing. Instead of us worshiping this other thing, we're really like, hey, what brings me pleasure? That's the thing I'll follow. That's the thing I'll serve. That's the thing I'll worship, because it makes me feel good. And it's easy. If it's hard, it doesn't make you feel good, you don't follow it. You move on to the next thing. It's in what we watch. It's in what we listen to. It's in the way that we speak. It's in the way we present ourselves. Idol worship is easy. And thirdly, it's explainable. It's easy to rationalize idol worship, guys, because everybody else is doing it. Everybody else is doing it. So surely it's not that bad. God, I know you've called me to stand here, but look at all the people around me. I just want to do what they're doing. They look like they're having fun. Why can't I go do with that? So yeah, this idol worship, man, it's everywhere. It's easy and it's explainable. And though God disciplines, right, his kids, his children, and sometimes that includes suffering for this unbelief and disobedience, and it's hard for us to understand that, but even through the suffering, it's better for us. It's good for us that we would suffer sometimes, and that's really hard to wrap your head around, because I can look at this and I can go, hey, maybe, just maybe, these guys don't deserve God's grace, don't deserve God's mercy. Look what he did in Egypt. Look what he did in the wilderness. Look what he did when he brought them into this land. And now this is a new generation that didn't have to fight. This is a new generation that didn't have to wander through the wilderness. This is a new generation that didn't have to rely on God to bring water from a rock or they'd starve. This is a new generation. They didn't go through any of this stuff. But now that they had this picture of what their ancestors had gone through, it's so easy to go, guys, do they really deserve God's mercy? Do they deserve God to send them a judge to bring them up and out of this? And it's easy for us to point the finger, and the answer is no. No, they don't deserve God's mercy. No, they don't deserve God sending a judge to help save them from their consequences. They don't. That's what makes God's mercy his mercy, that they do not deserve it. And we don't deserve it either. Thank God that he's not like us, that his ways are higher than our ways, that he thinks about this thing differently. That even if we look at this and we can't really understand what's going on, right? We can argue that God should abandon them, that God should give them over. but he's slow to anger, and he is abounding in love. And I thank God for that, because he's dealt with us the exact same way. These judges, right, in the book, I've used the word and I wanted to explain it before we got there, but here we go. Not like banging on a gavel like I'm the judge, more kind of like a warrior leader type of figure who God says, hey, you go and lead them. You go and save them from their oppression. You go and save them from these warring armies. And time again, as God raised up these judges and was with them, the judges saved the people from the consequence of their sin. Consistently, time after time. We'll get into that. But the judges could never stop the heart behind it. They could stop the consequence of sin by saving the people, but they couldn't stop the sin itself. And so let's connect it. Let's connect it to Christ in this way, that Christ, Jesus, is a better judge. He didn't come and say, hey, guys, I want to save you from your consequences. He said, I'm going to take the brunt of those. I'm going to bear your consequences. It's going to be me. But he doesn't leave us there. He says, not only am I going to take the pain of your consequence, not only am I going to carry that myself, I'm going to give you a new heart. I'm going to give you a new heart to deal with this sin thing. Because left to yourselves, you're just going to continue in this cycle. So I'm going to give you a new heart so you're going to want after righteousness. You're going to want after what it is that I give you. And so to wrap this thing up, I'm going to give you guys a few more minutes, a little bit longer time to talk in your groups. I've got 2 last questions, and here's what they are. Is what are some things that you say you believe but you struggle to live out? Because this nation would call themselves the follower of God, and we do the same thing. We say that we believe, but are there things in the Bible, things that we've unpacked, things that we talk about that you say, I believe this, but you really struggle day in and day out to live that thing out? And then how do we name some things? How do we prevent, right, our heart from being redirected towards these idols? How do we redirect our heart away from these idols and back onto God? And so I want you guys to spend some time in your small groups talking through these things to try to figure out where it is. And I, on purpose, I didn't want us to bring this back to the stage because I really want you guys to pour into your small groups. I want you to really open up and be honest about where our hearts are. Because if we're honest, there are absolutely some things that we struggle to live by faith. That we say, yes, I understand that God says this and I believe it. But when I walk outside these doors, it's really hard. I know he says to love my neighbor like myself. I don't even know my neighbor's names. I don't really like them because their dog barks all the time. There's kids at school that, I mean, they're just mean to everyone, so why should I be nice to them? They talk bad about me. Why should I ever pray for them? What about me, God? That we're really focused on this inward thing when God calls us outward. That God has said, hey, go share. That God says, hey, go tell everyone about me and what I've done for you. And we go, yeah, God, but I'd be the awkward kid. They'd think really differently of me. I believe that I'm supposed to go. When's the last time you told somebody what you believe? So let's talk. Let's talk in our small groups. I'm going to pray us out, and you guys are good to go. Lord, thank you so much for the book of Judges. It is a terrifying book at times. But God, it pierces right through us. It sees our heart. And so would you use this time, God, to shine some light on the things that we struggle with, to shine some light so that we might be exposed and clean that out, God. We don't have to stay where we are. And so would you bless these small group leaders and all these students, God, that they might be open and honest with you, God, and that the words that are shared in these groups, God, might help change our hearts. And we thank you for that. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.